Lots of people out there today. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming, for getting your dressed up and coming to help honor my dad. He would have liked that. Dad, though, you might know, wasn't a suit and tie kind of guy, so he's probably getting a kick out of all of us in our get-ups. So that was my dad. I want to tell a story about it. When I was a young man in the Navy, I was stationed on board the USS Kentucky, and I met this chief. He was an old guy, a lot like my father, ready for retirement, and he used to impress upon us young guys that we were all warriors. Now, it's not a term that we usually use in our society right now because we're not all broad-chested men, you know, half-naked carrying axes, and that's typically what we think of. But I think that it's an appropriate term for a man like my father. He was a warrior. I searched the internet looking for cool quotes, and one of my favorite philosophers is Bruce Lee, and he quoted this. He said, "The successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus." And I think that describes my father well because he was very focused on many, many, many things in his life. But three primary divisions that he was mostly focused on are the three things I'd like to talk about today. Number one was his country. He was a patriot. He fought for you. He fought for me. He fought for our rights. He fought for strangers. And it's displayed here. He didn't even wear a suit. He wanted to be buried in his uniform because he was so damn proud of that. And we can look at all these awesome pictures of when he was younger. He was just very, very proud. We can look at his shadow box here, and you can see the timeline where he climbed the ranks of the United States Air Force, and he got numerous accommodations, numerous awards. So he was successful. He's a very successful warrior for our country. He was a patriot. And it was very, very important for him. He did it as a young man. He was 20 years old when he joined the Air Force. He served in Vietnam. He served in every conflict up until the Desert Shield, Desert Storm, where he retired. He fought for you. He fought for me. He fought for us all. He was very, very focused on his military career. My dad was a freedom fighter. He was a freedom warrior. Another thing that he was very focused on was his family. He was the architect of our family. He built my family. He built it right. He was very proud of us today. A couple of things I'd like to highlight about my dad and his family, or my family, is his undying devotion to my mother. He loved my mom so much. Excuse me. He was so focused on making her happy. Everything he did, everything she wanted, whether he could do it or not, he would find a way. He fought for it. He was very, very focused on keeping my mom happy. And he did a good job. My brother and sister, we never wanted for a thing. Never went to bed hungry, never went to bed sad. Always had a bed to sleep in. He did everything for us. He was very, very focused on us. And it wasn't just providing for us. He defended us. He protected us. I got a story about when I was a young man. This might come as a surprise to a lot of you, but I wasn't the most awesome student. I got in a few troubles. I got in a few fights, mainly over my older sister, because he instilled upon us that you don't let anybody talk about your family. You don't let anybody mess with us. So I got in trouble a few times for that, but I got one story in particular that I'd like to tell you about my father. I don't even remember how old I was. I was in probably grade school, 8th, 9th grade, and there's this teacher who had a history of being hard on the students. We learned a lot from him, but he was tough. His name was Don Baker. I don't know if you remember him, sis, but tough guy, tough teacher. One time I was probably cutting up in class, doing what I normally did, and I got in trouble, and I shut down, and I put my head on the table like this, and it pretty much ignored everything. Everything he was trying to tell me, everything that, whatever lesson he was trying to teach me. And he came up behind me, and he grabbed me. He meant to tickle, I guess, but he grabbed me, and it startled me so much that I turned around, and I knocked him over, head over heels, books flying, bookshelves going over, and he subsequently grabbed me, and he pinned me on the table. And then he said those magic words, "Go call your father." And I said, "Hell yes, I'm going to call my father." So, Dad normally came in his dress blues, those, and he would come in very professional, and say, "Yes, I understand my son's done this, he's done this, whatever, and I'll take care of it at home." But this time he came in his fatigues. I remember like it was yesterday because I thought it was odd that he didn't take his hat off. You military guys know that the first thing you do when you go into a building as a military man in uniform is you want to cover. You take your hat off. He didn't. He didn't even talk to me. He went straight to this guy. And I remember because he put his hat down and he just pulled it down over his brow. And he told Don Baker in no uncertain terms that he wasn't to touch me. And I can't repeat what he said, but I remember it. I think Don Baker became a Christian that day. I saw the fear of God in his eyes. And he took me out for ice cream. He said, don't let anybody do that kind of stuff to you, or your sister or your brother. Never. Always defend, always protect. And by his example, I think, and I speak for my brother as well, he taught me how to be a man. He taught me how to live in this world. And it wasn't just me, it was Helene. He taught her how to change a tire, all the stuff that she needed to do in order to survive in this world. That was my dad. He was a family warrior. He fought for us, always. Laser-like focus on us. And the final thing, and probably the most important thing he focused on, was God. He was a man of faith. As a young man, I remember Bible studies and such, and we'd have strangers come to the house, and he would teach them. I mean, only God knows how many souls he saved, but it was always focused on doing that. It was always very, very important for him to teach us the ways of the Lord. He prayed for us every night. My mom can attest for this. He prayed every night for every one of his kids, his grandkids. They did it together. I just recently learned that on their trips to like the pharmacy and such, base, my mom and dad would sing these old hymns in the car. And Dad wasn't always a vocal guy. He was very introverted, very reserved. But when my mom told me that they used to sing together, it just warmed my heart. During his last time in the hospital, he trusted God. He put his life in God's hands, and he told me his last Bible lesson for me was trust in the Lord always. He knows what's going on. It might look terrible, like it does now. But trust in God, everybody. This is an important thing. If he could tell you something right now, he would say trust in God. Believe in him. So, in conclusion, I think that my dad wants us to celebrate. We need to celebrate my dad. He was a great man. We already know we're going to see him again. Our faith dictates that. We will see him again. He will be a brand new man. We know he's in heaven. We know this. He's probably fishing with his brothers. He's probably playing fetch with his dog. He's not upset, guys. He's happy. We need to celebrate. We need to be happy for him. He's going to be with us. He's still here. in spirit, in his mannerisms. My Uncle Denny, God bless you, man, he so eloquently put when we were visiting that we, his children, have his mannerisms. Some of the little nuances that we do, how we scratch our elbows or lay on the floor, these are things that my dad did. And we are him. He is here. His lessons, God, we could spend the rest of, our lives learning his lessons and understanding what he meant by it. His quotes, man. Some of them aren't appropriate in this setting, but I'll tell you what, those quotes are gonna live on. We're gonna say them. We're gonna do them. So, I don't know how he affected your lives. I can tell you how he affected mine. And I just pray that for the remainder of my life, that I can live in a way that makes him proud. I hope, and I pray that I'll maintain a laser focus on things that are important to me as well. So I can someday be just like my dad, that I could be a successful warrior. Just like my dad. Thanks, guys.